If you're like me and you like novels that are about other countries and America's relationship with them, particularly our adversaries, you're gonna love this one. It's a new novel. It's called The World We Wish. It's by John Moody. He's been a lifetime journalist. He was an executive for 22 years at Fox News. Full disclosure, back in 1996, John hired me to Fox News, and I was there for a couple of years. We had a whale of a time, and then we all decided it was probably good for me to leave Fox News. But that was 20 years ago, and I've always maintained my respect and admiration for John. John, congratulations on this book, this novel. It's the sequel to a novel that came out about China called "Of Course They Knew, Of Course They ... That was about the beginnings of the pandemic. This one is about artificial intelligence. Explain why.
Well, David, first of all, the respect is mutual, and thanks for having me back on. Sure. David, China has such a huge advantage over the rest of the world, including the United States, in the research and application of artificial intelligence that it really bore scrutiny, and that's what this book is about. I fear that because artificial intelligence is just a term that we throw around now without really knowing what it entails, that we're missing the danger of letting China get so far ahead of us.
And you tell this story, this novel, through fictional characters, but based on sort of real world events. Is there an architect of China's artificial intelligence program? And is it that person's or the government's mission to conquer the metaverse, as you put it?
The answer is yes to both questions, David. There certainly is a head of China's artificial intelligence program. It's not the name that I used in the book, of course. And the specific stated reason for that position and that entity is stated by the Communist Party quite openly, to become the world's leading source of artificial intelligence applications and to use it for the betterment and goodness of the party.
And for the goodness of the party, that means their ability to essentially track through artificial intelligence, literally the movements of all of their people, and to essentially put down people who may be dissidents. And that technology, that ability to track, helps them with their sort of goal of worldwide communism with Chinese characteristics.
That's exactly right, David. Couldn't have put it better. Look, they don't just want to control their own people. They don't just want to follow them. They want to follow everybody in the world. And I know that sounds ludicrous, but it is not beyond their capabilities to install applications and software in the tools that we all use that are made in China. And what we never look for is in the software of it, what's in there that we don't understand, and how is it all getting back to China as quickly as it does? Let me give you one quick example. Sure. The door monitors and cameras that we all put into our houses now, for very good reasons, to avoid crime and to see who's knocking at the door, et cetera. Most of those are made in China, and most of that history, that recorded history on our door answering machines, goes to China.
And what does China then do with something like that in a worst case scenario?
Right now, nothing. They just store it, because the Chinese don't think in terms of news cycles like you and I did when we were at Fox. They think in terms of 40 and 50 and 100 years, and they'll have that material, they'll have that information, who knocked on your door or who rang your doorbell at 4:30 yesterday afternoon. And if it's someone that you didn't really want other people to know was coming to your door, they know that too. And so there'll be a time when they decide to use it. And that's when Americans have to understand what they're doing when they use Chinese-made products.
And so there's the potential, I suppose, for blackmail for anybody, but particularly, I suppose, for our government leaders or our future leaders. The Chinese may have something on them. And what does China ultimately expect? I mean, is it a sort of a 40 or 50-year plan in terms of how this plays out?
I believe it is, David. I think they have a shorter range objective, and that involves the so-called metaverse. It's another one of those terms that we're not quite sure what it means. Does it just mean, you put something on your head and you can slay dragons with a lightsaber, or is it more than that? And of course, we're being told by the head of Meta, the former Facebook, that someday we will all live our lives. I'm going to emphasize that, live our lives in the metaverse. That's a very chilling statement.
Well, John, you get at these issues with a really compelling narrative and the same sort of cast of characters that you had in your first novel. Tell me a little bit about more and sort of their development.
Yeah, one of the problems with being an author is you fall in love with your own characters. And I thought that both of the characters that I've taken forward in this book were interesting enough, and that their interactions were interesting enough, and the things that they believed and taught each other were interesting enough to validate a sequel. Now, in this sequel, I am moving my characters from just the idea of artificial intelligence into another new era product, which is called the metaverse. A lot of people don't know what the metaverse is. They think it just means putting on a headset over your eyes and around your head, and you get put into a fake setting where you're slaying dragons with a lightsaber, and it's just a game. It can be a lot more than that, and it is very quickly developing into more than that. We're being told by the head of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, that someday we literally, and he means it literally, will live our entire lives in the metaverse.
And we got a taste of that during the pandemic, where we were all essentially meeting through Zooms and remote, and essentially now there's going to be this ability. Imagine that times 1,000 in terms of the experience. But the danger, of course, is that there's data with all of that, right?
Everything that you do and even think when you're in the metaverse is transmitted to the maker of that program, and China is by far the leading provider of these programs.
Now, I can understand why China has the impulse to sort of be such a leader in all this, but how come the United States has fallen so far behind? Is it because of policy? Is it because our leaders are not paying attention, or maybe they don't understand it?
David, I really think, and this is a nonpartisan complaint on my part, I really think that our political leaders just don't want to spend the time and effort that it takes to understand the depth of the issues about artificial intelligence and leading on from that, the metaverse. They're more interested in making points about patriotism and this and that, which is not inconsiderable, but you also have to be smart enough and broad thinking enough to take in all the problems. And truly, our future is lagging behind that of China when it comes to this technology.
When we last had you on, you pointed out that the power of China is growing while it's sort of essentially diminishing among Western powers, and that China is slowly essentially crushing us. What have you seen over the last year that gives you the greatest pause?
I think the same thing that you saw a couple of weeks ago. Xi Jinping, the maximum leader of China, being given an unprecedented third 5-year term. And believe me, he is now as powerful as Mao Zedong ever was. He is as powerful as Joseph Stalin ever was in the Soviet Union. And this guy has big plans, and they include taking over Taiwan by force or by diplomacy, and bringing the Western world, most especially the United States, to heel. And so that, as you pointed out earlier, we all live in socialism with Chinese characteristics.
How much of China's ambitions for Taiwan have perhaps been put on hold or altered because of Russia's war in Ukraine, and what the world response has been to that?
I think by a certain number of months, possibly a year, but Xi Jinping is watching very carefully. He probably thinks that his armed forces are far superior to those of Russia, and he might be right. And he also is looking to see how the West in general, I don't mean just the United States, but the West, responds to more and more threats, against Taiwan. And when he sees what the West has failed to do in response to the invasion of Ukraine, he's got to feel pretty good about his chances.
Your novel, in addition to being a great read and of course bringing up all these challenges that the United States faces, it comes at a time when it seems like our politics seems even more hopelessly sort of deadlocked, and the partisanship and the extremes seem to be growing. Are you optimistic or pessimistic that the US political system, that we have the ability to somehow come together and at least try to address some of these issues? Or should we just sort of forget about it and get used to the idea that no, we are always going to be behind China, and we have to prepare for the day when China uses all of this data to dominate the United States in some capacity?
Well, I don't think it's inevitable, David, but I think that it's very possible that we will fall behind them permanently. They plan ahead. They don't have different opinions from different political parties. They don't have the endless back and forth bantering that we have in Washington, because if you say no to Xi Jinping, you're likely not to be around tomorrow. Some people might think that that's not a bad idea, but the United States just simply can't do it that way. That's not who we are. I think that we can always call on the American spirit. We can always call on American ideals, but we have to do it as one people. It's no good doing it in divided fashion and blaming everybody else for what's going on.
And speaking of people, we have a number of people at the Young Turks who reside in Pittsburgh, including our publishing team. And the main character in your novel, I believe his name is Henry. He hails from Pittsburgh, and you have some connections to Pittsburgh. And so there's a third novel also involving Henry that's in the works.
You've heard it here first, folks. Yes, there's a third one coming. It'll be the final part of the trilogy, and it will resolve a lot of issues while raising others.
Well, if there's anybody who's going to be a heroine and save all of us from all of these dastardly conflicts that we face, of course it's going to be somebody from Pittsburgh. So in any case, the novel is World We Wish. It's by John Moody. This is the sequel to the previous novel. Of course they knew, of course they ... The World We Wish is about artificial intelligence and the metaverse and the challenge from China. John, always great having you on the program. Let us know when the third one comes out. We'll have you right back on to talk about that one.
You'll be the first to know, David. Thank you.
All right, thank you.